Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Love Fruit podcast. And we are joined today by a wonderful guest. He is an award-winning author, speaker, and musician, well known for his book, The World Peace Diet, Dr. Will Tuttle. Uh, how are you today?
Thank you, Ronnie. I'm doing great. Thanks, everyone, for watching and listening in.
Great. Is there anything you'd like to say about yourself in introduction before we get started?
Oh, well, I think I really appreciate your efforts to help raise awareness about the importance of eating healthy food that's healthy for our bodies and for ourselves on every level, our minds, our spirits, and for the earth and for animals. I've been a vegan since 1980. I always say it was the smartest thing I ever did besides marrying my wonderful wife, Madeleine. And it's been great. 43 years of getting better every day. So that's it. I'm pretty well known as an author of a book called The World Peace Diet, which has been translated now into about, I think, 19 languages. And Madeleine and I have traveled a lot. We've been all over the world many times, all over the United States, all 50 states, over 50 countries, just basically spreading the vegan message of compassion and health and sustainability and freedom for all beings. And we're delighted to continue to do that. We're still doing quite a bit of traveling and writing and online classes and events and all those things. So and doing concerts, and she's an artist. So we do art exhibits of or paintings of animals and nature, and we also have a garden. We're really avid gardeners now. Also, we lived for 17 years in an RV, just traveling without a house, just traveling around the United States in a home on wheels. But for the last just about 10 years, we've had a house here in Northern California. And we have about 75 fruit and nut trees, and we have a lot of vegetables. And so we're growing our food too, which is kind of a neat thing.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So if we can take it back to the start, were you were you brought up as a vegan or a vegetarian, anything like that?
No, not at all. It's kind of the opposite. We ate a lot of meat, dairy, and eggs when I was a kid growing up. Back in the 1950s in Massachusetts, right outside Boston, in Concord, Massachusetts. It was kind of a neat place. There was Emerson and Thoreau and Alcott, the Transcendentalist movement. They were actually kind of experimenting with vegetarianism, and they actually had a community called Fruitlands back in the 1840s, which we would call vegan. And there were some people from England actually there too that joined them, and they did that for a few years. It was hardcore vegan. No wool, silk, no animal, no cotton, because cotton came from slavery back in the 1840s. So they were walking through the snowdrifts of Concord in shoes made out of linen. So they were hardcore vegans. I didn't know anything about that till later. But when I found out, when I was in college, I started doing more research and questioning a lot of the war. With the Vietnam War was going on, and I started doing yoga and meditating. And I didn't go vegetarian, but I went on a pilgrimage with my brother. We decided to leave home and walk to California. We thought we would walk all the way to California, all the way across the whole country. And we did. We got as far as Buffalo, which was like maybe a third of the way. And then we headed south, and we ended up walking all the way to Alabama with no money, just walking and meditating. And we ended up for a while at the largest hippie commune in the world back then. It was in Nashville, south of Nashville, Tennessee. It was called The Farm. And it was mainly people from California. And they were all vegetarians. And that was it. That was kind of what gave me the impetus. They had about 900 people. They were, well, actually, we would call them vegans today. No one could say vegan because no one knew that word back then. But at least there. But they didn't eat meat or dairy or eggs or even honey. And they had about 200 children that were vegan from birth. They were all thriving. So
Wow.
that was it. I've never eaten meat in my life because they told me about the cruelty to animals and about how inefficient it is. We have people starving to death because most of the food we're growing, we're feeding to animals while people go hungry. And they were healthy. They looked great. They weren't just, dying of a protein deficiency or anything. So I've never eaten meat in my life since that day in 75. I found out years later when I met Madeleine that the same month and year in Switzerland, she's Swiss, that she also never ate meat. And then in 1980, 5 years later, I was living in San Francisco in meditation centers. I ended up in a Tibetan Buddhist and then Zen Buddhist meditation centers. And so I became a vegan in 1980. And interestingly, a few years later, I decided to become a Zen Buddhist monk and shave my head, and was living in a monastery in South Korea that was vegan for 750 years. So I realized that
Wow.
veganism is not this new hippie thing, really. It's an ancient wisdom tradition that goes back hundreds of, probably thousands of years. People have understood, really, that eating animal foods is bad news. It's bad for our health, bad for the environment, bad on every level. It's not necessary. So that really deepened my understanding of it to a whole nother level, that whole thing. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I'd like to ask you, actually, what did you initially study in college, and where did you go?
Initially, I went to college in Maine, and my father owned a whole chain of newspapers. So I was the oldest child. I was going to take that over. It was called the Beacon. So I was studying writing and literature, and also business administration, because I'd have to run the whole thing. So I was kind of going to do all that, but then I had a midlife crisis that hit me when I was 20, and I thought, if I just go down that road of I'm going to end up 60 or 70 years old, and I won't know what I did with my life. I really felt a calling to another way of living, to at least question things. So I started reading books about Ramana Maharshi in India and how he kept saying, find out who you are and meditate. And so I told my father, and my younger brother, Ed, to my delight, he agreed. He thought we should do that. So my father gave us his blessing. He said, all right, if you want to do that, go ahead, So that's what we ended up. I ended up doing that, and ended up in Alabama, and then in Atlanta, and then in these meditation centers. But now I'm doing a lot of publishing. I'm writing and publishing, in sort of in a new way. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's almost going back to the family business in a sense.
Right. I know, because it's really, his whole thing, my father, in many ways, even though he wasn't a vegan, he really loved nature and animals, and he wouldn't hunt. I mean, a lot of his friends, everybody hunted, but he wouldn't do that. But he really believed in freedom. He was always about freedom. And so I feel like, okay, we care about freedom. We should have freedom for everybody, including the animals. Take it one more step. I think it's good to try to take our parents' message and take it one step further if we can. And I think that's really relevant.
Were you brought up religious at all?
We went to church. It was the Episcopalian church, the Anglican church, I guess you'd say. And we went most Sundays. My mother was into it. My father, he kind of went when he had to. But I was a musician, so I learned to play the piano, and then I started making my living as a church organist when I was still in high school. I started playing the organ at the Methodist church. So I was kind of brought up religiously, but quite honestly, it was kind of like water on a duck's back. It didn't make sense to me, most of the creed and the, Jesus dying for my sins and all that. I couldn't really relate to it that much. When I started studying and reading Zen Buddhist teachings and also some of the yoga stuff, I thought, wow, this is really cool. It went deeper. And then I started to see more deeply into what Jesus was saying. I started to really respect his teachings much more, but I think it was a kid. I was more into athletics and outdoors and camping and nature and swimming and hiking and skiing and skating and hockey and all this stuff. That's where I got my feeling of, I guess, spiritual feelings was more in nature.
It seems like you had a kind of a curious mind, and you were a searcher, you were a seeker. at a young age. Where do you think that came from?
Yeah, that's a good question. Where it came from, I'm not totally sure. My mother's mother, my grandmother, she was very inspirational to me, and she had this quality about her of deep inner peace. And she wasn't a vegan, but she always said, "Well, my doctor said I shouldn't eat any meat," and she was kind of very, very gentle and very open-minded about religion, and that we should always be loving and positive. She was really into positivity, and so I think she planted some seeds. And the other thing I think was the music. I started playing the piano pretty early on because my father played the piano, and when I was in college, I got rebellious and I didn't want to just play other people's music. I was playing Mozart and Beethoven and all this Bach and all this stuff. And I started feeling like music wanted to come through me. And so I just started playing without thinking, sort of as a meditation. And that really started transporting me into these mystical states where I would feel that I was just a channel of love and energy and creativity. And these beautiful harmonies and melodies would come through. And I didn't know where it came from, but it really, I thought music is very powerful. Music can really open up our hearts. And that's, I think, one of the things that began to make me really interested in spirituality too. I saw there's a connection there. There's something more to this life than just trying to compete and make money and impress people, that kind of thing. So I don't know. I think some of those things.
It's funny because I can relate to that journey of music, spirituality, and then changing your diet as well as and lifestyle and everything. Fascinating. And so you found meditation and techniques like that. What were your first experiences like that and with that, and what benefits did you get from it? Did you notice changes quite quickly when you started doing that?
Yeah, when I first started meditating, I was still in college, and I read a book on Zen, and I just started trying to do something. And I don't think I got very far. It was okay. And then I spent the summer after the last year in college. Then that was right at the end of college, just being a camp counselor and in nature a lot. And then when my brother and I went on the road, we decided to leave home and just meditate like all the time. And we just would walk like 15 miles a day and just do like walking meditation, then sitting meditation, then walking meditation and sitting. And we wouldn't read. We only had 2 books. We read them over and over again. One was a book about Ramana Maharshi. One was the Crest Jewel of Discrimination by Shankara. And we just kept reading these books over and over again. And we did this for months. And then we ended up finally walked all the way to Alabama. And in Alabama, we ended up at the Zen Center. And they gave us a room, and we just meditated from 6 a.m. till 11 a.m, and then from 2 p.m. till 5 p.m, and then from 6 and 7 in the evening till 9 in the evening. We were just meditating like 12 hours a day. It was really intense. And so I was like, I don't want to waste my life doing something else. But I think I got some benefits from that. I mean, I really feel like I did. I don't know what they are exactly, except that it sort of just focused my life in another direction. Like I'm not part of this world. I just felt like this world, all it wants to do is enslave us and exploit us and distract us and keep us busy and just extract energy and money from us. So I was really rebellious, and I just thought the best thing is to try to understand my own mind. So that went on for, several years. And then eventually I drove out to California, and I lived in a Tibetan Buddhist meditation center, which really, they really do a lot of long meditations. So I did quite a few more. And I started having some experiences in this long retreat I took. I left my body at one point, which, was kind of interesting. I could see this body and I could see that's not me. And this is the whole thing that, that some of these teachers have said. And then eventually I went to Korea, like I said, and did a lot of meditating over there. And I just, what can I say? I mean, I got into these states of deep peace and awareness, and realizing, I guess, essentially that my mind had been colonized since I was a little kid. Since I was born, my mind had been colonized, and I didn't even know what I am or what anything. It was like this program just came into my mind and told me, this is who you are, and this is what you like and what you don't like. And I just accumulated all these things. So to me, meditation was really a process of just letting go and letting go and letting go of everything and getting back to the pure sky of awareness that isn't cluttered. And so it's really working with the fact that the mind is always thinking. It's just always thinking. And the thoughts always revolve around me, what I like and what I don't like, and what I want and what I don't want. And if we can somehow let that go, we can realize that even this me is a fiction. It's not what we are. And eventually I did have, and I think it was in October of 1987 at a retreat in Northern California, I finally had an experience where everything fell away, and including even the falling away. And that was kind of like something that really felt like something really deep changed within me at that point, that I got a glimpse. And then I had a Zen teacher, and I told him about it. And he just said, from now on, the rest of your life is to bring every aspect of your life into alignment with what you just realized. So it's just living it. It's not anything other than sort of an in the trenches living the truth that there's one life and it lives through all of us, and we're all manifestations of this one life, and we're not fundamentally separate. And so, I did a lot of long, difficult practices. I did this thing, walking 72 hours without stopping, where I just walked around this plum tree in the backyard of my little house where I lived in Oakland. My old Zen teacher had said that people in India would do this as a meditation practice. And that was powerful. I learned from that how after maybe 40 hours of walking without stopping, I mean, it's very difficult to do this. I reached, my mind just kind of gave up, and I started to see reality in a whole different way. And I realized that things are alive. I started to see the flowers. They were just so bright and so alive. And the tree I was walking around became alive, not like biologists say, oh, it's alive. This was really alive. The tree was a being. I never knew it was such a being, but walking around it at night, I'll never forget it. And so that realization, I guess the realization was that I had been born into a culture that forced me to see everything pretty much as dead. It's just a tree, it's just this and that. And I saw that actually things really are alive. If the left brain, I think the left brain just went to sleep. It got out of the picture, and I could start seeing directly how things are. So it gave me a glimpse into the reality that there's so much more to this world than we are taught or we have any idea, and a sense of respect and awe and wonder at the beauty of life around us in nature. I think that's the big problem. That's one of the main reasons I love veganism, is that it's really based on respect for these other beings, respect for nature and for the birds and all these animals, instead of just treating them like commodities. I mean, it's so crazy how we live in the world. And so I think spirituality is a really important part of veganism.
Have you ever had spiritual teachers say things like, because I had a brother who told me a story. My brother, for a while, lived in Plum Village in
Thich
Nhat Hanh's monastery or place. And he once told me that there was someone that said that he had found a teacher, or there was a monk or whatever, and he was personally a vegetarian, and the monk took him out to eat meat to kind of try and prove a point to him to say none of this really matters or something like that. I don't know. There's some kind of spiritual point about like, well, this is you need to let go of these attachments or whatever it was. I don't know. But have you ever heard that kind of spiritual excuse for eating meat that I seem to hear sometimes?
Right. Yeah, that's been a big theme in my life, really, because I've been living in these meditation centers, and like when I lived in the Tibetan Buddhist center, most of us were vegetarians. I wasn't a vegan at that point. That was about like 1977 or 78, but we had to prepare uh, beef for our lama every single day because that's what he wanted to eat. He wanted to eat meat, So it was kind of like, oh my gosh, and then that's why I was so glad when I got to Korea and this monastery was vegan. There was no meat, no dairy, no eggs, no wool, no silk, no leather, no suffering of animals, no killing mosquitoes. It was really, and they've been doing this for 800 years. It was, and I realized that there are spiritual traditions especially in Korea and China and in Vietnam, in the Buddhist tradition, the Mahayana tradition, where they really do practice that. And I have been flown over to China 3 times now to spread veganism, and it's been sponsored by the Chinese Buddhists. They really, they're into it. But then if we go to Thailand, to those Buddhists, they're all eating meat, and they're very upset with you if you ever question it because they think that they are entitled to it. And it's like you say, it's just we should, the monk puts out the bowl, like they go out begging, and if they put out their bowl and someone puts meat in it, then they think they should eat it because it was offered to them. And so the problem is that that didn't used to happen until the Westerners came in a few hundred years ago and started giving this idea that meat is something that's very precious, and so now the people want to give something precious to the monks, and the monks feel like they're entitled to eating, because they're treated like gods in Thailand. And so the whole thing is corrupt, really. It's all been corrupted. The original teachings of Buddhism, if the people put meat in your bowl, the Buddha said, don't eat it. Don't eat it. Just leave it out. Don't give it to the dogs or something, but don't eat the meat. It's not allowed. So there's quite a bit of controversy, and people still talk about it as being an attachment, which I think is really ridiculous. I mean, they wouldn't go out and say, okay, we're going to beat somebody up, we're going to rape somebody, just to show you not to be attached. But if you do it to a cow or a pig, then it somehow it shows you. I mean, what a farce! I mean, it's such a lie. It's so pathetic. I mean, really, it's just.
That's a great answer. And I have, so I remember, I don't know who it was, but there was a guy, I think he was a Tibetan maybe, that was in the US in maybe the 70s or the 80s or whatever, and he was meant to be a lama and everything, but he was like an alcoholic, drug addict, sleeping with a woman, and it got branded as like crazy wisdom, like he was doing all this stuff to test people or whatever. Like obviously it wasn't that, but within like cults of personality, people kind of put up with almost anything, it seems sometimes.
I know it's really it's tricky, and of course I think for a lot of people that come from more traditional societies like Tibet, when they come to the West, they get put up on a pedestal and honored, and it goes to their head, and they can. They don't know how to deal with it, I think, a lot of times. And there's been a lot of bad things have happened. Unfortunately, people have gotten hurt by these kinds of things. And that's why I like what my old Zen teacher said. He just said, you have to live this every day. And it's in a way, it's no big deal. It's just try to live as much as possible a life of kindness and respect for other expressions of life. And that's not easy in our world. Our world is based on the opposite of that, really.
So it seems in terms of your dietary journey, it seems like yoga and meditation sort of led to vegetarianism a little bit or something like that. And then you end up going for this epic walk and you end up at this place, the farm, which sounds fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. But going back to like when you went vegetarian, it probably wasn't very common back then, or how common was it to become a vegetarian in the late 70s or mid 70s?
Yeah, it wasn't. It was uncommon. It was, it was an unusual, strange thing, and it was just back in the day when things were just starting. Especially, there wasn't the word vegan, but like when we were at the farm, there was no such thing anywhere as non-dairy ice cream, but we invented the first non-dairy ice cream right there. We called it ice beam. We took soy milk and we added some thickener and some sweetener and froze it, and there it was, voila. And the idea, was everything was so primitive. We had soy milk with powders and all these things. It was really, there wasn't much, like no one heard of vitamin B12. Everybody now is like, vitamin B12. And I went probably at least a decade never even knowing we were supposed to take vitamin B12. And so it was great. It was like a pioneering work. We made our own tofu, because you couldn't buy it in a store. We made our own tempeh. And we did a lot of those kinds of things because so to me, it was kind of neat. It was like this whole learning all these new foods I never heard of as a kid growing up, all these grains, kasha and millet and all these things, and I really liked it. I thought it was like learning other cultures, other ways of doing things. Because I moved into a meditation center, so I gave up so many things. I gave up furniture, and I haven't had furniture in like 40 years. We have zafus and zabutons. Like I'm sitting on the floor right now. Everything's on the floor. I just think, it makes more sense, just to live that way, and sort of just kind of questioning all the ways that I was taught to do things as a kid growing up. I think it's really healthy to do that, to just
Sure.
realize there's other ways of doing things, because a lot of the ways we do things in the West really are not in our best interest. Like furniture, in many ways, it keeps us up off the ground. It pushes our back in a weird position.
Yeah.
We're just always uncomfortable, pretty much. It's like our clothes, everything. It's all like this whole system that's based, the way, the toilets, the way they are. In Korea, we just squat on the floor. It's like everything it's much more natural. Everything is, there's so much. We do things in ways that we never question. But for me, sort of getting involved with other cultures in the beginning and living in a Tibetan Buddhist center and going a lot to these Korean and Vietnamese and so forth places, I just saw there's whole other ways of living that make sense in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. The farm, this vegan place you went to, and you say there's hundreds of people and they were all vegan and the kids were vegan and everything. How did you find that, and what were tell us just about finding that place and what it was like and living there and things?
Yeah, that was a really interesting place. I had heard about it, and so as we walked south, it was like we ended up at a community that was kind of a satellite of that in Kentucky. And so we just thought, all right, we'll go to the mothership, the big one. And so we walked down to that one, and yeah, they had a gate. You had to get in. They wouldn't let you in unless you were, not, they didn't want alcoholics and drug addicts and whatever. And then there was this visitor's tent. We all stayed in the visitor's tent, and then we worked. And it was really a radical place. There was, the people who lived there permanently, they would come, they would give everything, whatever they had, they would give it to the farm. And then the people would just work and grow food and make housing. And we had the book publishing company. Well, that was the main way they made money, was publishing books. And this famous book came out called the Spiritual Midwifery Guide. And I was from a publishing family, so I said, I'm going there. So I was working on the press. I knew how to work presses. I knew how to do all that stuff. So I was working there, and we were publishing the Spiritual Midwifery Guide, which my sister, a few years later, I gave it to her, and she had all three of her kids at home with a midwife. And it was really great. It was like, we're going to do everything ourselves. We're not going to use doctors. We're not going to, get involved with government. We're just going to be self-sufficient and live on the earth and grow our own food and meditate together, marry, do weddings, do funerals, whatever it is. we're not going to, we don't need the outer world, really. We'll sell books and things. I thought it was a very healthy community. It seemed, they had the teacher, Stephen Gaskin, and his wife, Ina May, and a lot of very educated, smart people were there. A lot of former university professors and people who were just dropped out and were doing that. But I remember finding out, so we were there, I was only there for a few weeks, really. Then we felt like we wanted to go to a place where we could just meditate all the time. So we went down to Huntsville. We heard about the Zen Center. It was very interesting how that all happened. But the farm eventually, a few years later, it got bigger. It got up to 1,500 people, and then it got attacked by the government, and it pretty much dispersed. I mean, it didn't disperse. It got smaller. It kind of went smaller, down to about 200 people. And it stayed now at 200 people, and it's doing great. It's still there. They still have over 1,000 acres of land in the community and 200 people. We were there a few years ago, and we did a 3 or 4 day training on the World Peace Diet. And I met some of the people I had known back then, and they're still doing great, but it's different. Now everybody has to take care of their own finances, and everybody pays a monthly thing into the farm. So it's a community, but everybody's independent financially. The original farm, it was like I say, it was a pure, I guess you'd say, communist. I mean, it was just like you gave, like it was set up as a monastery. You just gave to the monastery. The monastery, if you needed food, they gave you food. If you needed clothes, they gave you clothes. Everybody just cooperated. It was a pure cooperative. Yeah. But the problem was, if you have 1,000 people and nobody had health insurance, and you have 1 or 2 people get some kind of bad accident or cancer or something, it just wiped them out financially. And so everybody had to take care of themselves financially. So a lot of people had to leave. So it was a big change that happened. But the good news is it's still going, and they still have, actually right today, they have the largest vegan cookbook publishing company in the United States. The book publishing company is still there, and quite a few great little businesses are there.
Wow, that's amazing. And did these books get into the big bookshops, or were they sold?
Oh yeah, they have. It's a major book publisher. Yeah, the book publishing company it's called. Yeah,
amazing. So, it seems like there was a point, obviously, where it was the 60s or 70s, where people wanted to, and I imagine, to be honest, there's always been these communes and things, and people wanting to go and live off the land, and but is that all really part of the fact that people want to live in community together? And a lot of the modern life, what happened at some point in the last century was that people started to live more separate lives, and so people were craving this connection of community. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it really is. We really miss, I think, healthy communities where we know each other, where it's like a village, like a healthy village where there's not too many people. You can have governance, or sort of tribal. We live, I think, in small villages and tribal communities probably for millions of years, thousands of years, a long time, before we get into this more mass society. And so there's something very nurturing and healing about creating an intentional community that's smaller, where and trust each other and help each other, and you're on the land and in nature and connected and growing your own food. And I have to say, those two communities, I mean, the farm and then Songwangsa, the Zen monastery in Korea, the two vegan communities, they were huge. I mean, they transformed my life, like totally. And so I have to say, I mean, they're really powerful. It's being in a community like that. It's a powerful experience, can be. It's difficult for these communities to survive. It seems like Madeleine and I lived in an RV, like I said, for 17 years, traveling around North America. And we looked everywhere. We went all over the whole country many times looking for communities, like sustainable vegan communities. Like, where are they? There aren't any. There's hardly any. It's very difficult. I think legal and financial laws and regulations and people's egos. And, if you buy into something, then well, what happens if I don't like them and I want to leave? Do I get my money back? And how do we do it? And how do we govern? And how, it's just, and so it's just like people start out. I hear this quite a bit. People say, well, I'm getting old now. I'd like to live the last years of my life in a vegan community on the land somewhere. Like where is one of these? I mean, I know a few people that are doing it here and there in Florida and a few other places.
Yeah.
But it's not easy. It's just,
I think the only way that would work is if it's a proper retirement community. And I don't see why there couldn't be a retirement community or village that entirely vegan. I'm not sure. I'm surprised there isn't anything like that. But that would be for retired people that, as you're saying, have the financial wherewithal to buy a place, be part of it, and make an investment in it. And I think something like that would be fantastic. I'm not sure why there wouldn't be more of that. But moving on to your life, obviously since then, could you fill in up to the point when you started to write books? What were you doing prior to that? I believe you went into academics and things like that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I went. After being in Korea as a monk, I decided to come back, and then I got my Ph.D. at Berkeley in philosophy of education, and I had got my master's degree at San Francisco State University in humanities, focusing on Zen arts, which was really interesting. But so I was teaching college. Yeah, I taught college for quite a few years, courses mainly in philosophy, epistemology, and then religion, comparative religion, and literature, and quite a lot in humanities, like world mythology and art and music and creative writing and literature and drama and movies, film, lots of different things. I taught many different courses. I'm kind of a generalist. I just see how everything fits together, So I really loved actually teaching. I didn't like the fact that I was always in these situations where I had to grade students and do all that stuff. So I decided when I was, maybe in my mid 30s, whatever it was, to just to take a sabbatical from that. And so as part of that, I went over to Russia. It was the Soviet Union back then, the Soviet Union, as part of a peace initiative to try to create peace between our countries. And so I played concerts in Armenia and in different places in Soviet Union. And then I traveled around Europe, and I met Madeleine actually there. And then I moved into a Volkswagen bus, and I decided to not go back to academia, to just travel and do concerts of original piano music, because I realized that I could, when I went to one of these like progressive churches that they have in the United States, I could play the piano and people loved the music, and they would buy so many cassettes that I could live. So people love the music. So I started doing that. I just thought, all right, I'll try that. So I was living in a little 1971 Volkswagen bus, traveling around every weekend. I'd play the piano. And then I started doing individual sessions for people where I would tune in to them. Like the psychic in Virginia Beach told a whole group of people that I could do this, that, this guy, Will Tuttle, can tune into you and he can create your soul music. And if you ask him to do it, he'll do it. So I never did that before, but he just told everybody I could do it. So I thought, yeah, I can. So I bought some recording equipment and I started creating these recordings for people. And then I started doing workshops on developing intuition, because my PhD at Berkeley was on educating intuition in adults. My whole idea was that besides rationality and logic, which are great tools, we have intuition. We have this capacity to know directly, that we can quiet our mind and actually learn and understand at a deeper level than just logic and analysis. Mm-hmm. And so I did a whole doctoral dissertation on that, which was actually nominated as the best dissertation at Berkeley that year, 1988. But then I was just traveling and doing this, and then eventually Madeleine came over from Switzerland, because it was time to make the first CD, And she said she could do, I just knew her as an artist that I had met in Switzerland, but she had fallen in love with the music in the meantime and was selling it over in Switzerland. She was buying my cassettes and selling them over there. And so she came over and we created our first baby, which was a CD. And we got married, and we've been married now for over 30 years. And so that was it. That was, that's kind of started things going. We created a bunch of CDs with her art and my music. And then we decided to just go out on the road in a bigger rig, like a pickup truck pulling this rolling home. And we thought we would do it for a month, for maybe a year, and we just loved it. We did it for 17 years, and that whole time we were traveling. But more and more, I was giving my lectures weren't just on intuition; they were on animal liberation. I really thought, we can't have spirituality and have animals being enslaved. And that led eventually to me writing the World Peace Diet. And when that came out, that really took off. And that kind of, sort of projected us into being much busier with giving a lot more events and traveling and so forth. So, yeah.
Amazing story. You've given a lot of presentations over the years then.
I think I've given probably more than anybody. I mean, in the sense, I know it's over 4,000 in just because we've been doing them for over 30 years, hundreds every year. I mean, probably many times 200 a year, and just traveling and doing it. Yeah, we're still doing it. I mean, I really think it's good to get to be with people physically and share and talk to them and learn from them and share our ideas. And so just giving presentations and then mixing in the music and the art with that, because I think it's important to focus on the beauty of animals and the beauty of this lifestyle, the beauty of vegetables and fruits, and the beauty of gardens and orchards. Why are we spending our time making the most ugly, hellacious, horrible, terrible things? Because we've been there. We've been to slaughterhouses and stockyards, and seen the horrible ugliness of monocropping and everything. And animal agriculture is so ugly. So just to try to celebrate the beauty of this lifestyle, that we can feed everyone on a fraction of the land, in beautiful gardens and fields. We can do it organically. We can do it veganically. We can nurture the plants and they'll nurture us. I mean, there's nothing stopping us. That's the thing. There's nothing stopping us. It's just this ridiculous inertia that people are afraid to change. I mean, so we could have such a beautiful life on this earth if we would, I think, do these two things really. Number one, go vegan, but number two, don't stop there. We need to really cultivate the spiritual dimension, because I know a lot of vegans who go vegan, but they still have a lot of anger and they're not, they don't see the bigger picture. So they tend not to, I think, to really be very helpful in sharing the message in a positive way, is I think we need to do.
So here's an interesting thing. I think it's interesting because I know that a lot of our listeners are interested in the raw food side of things, the living foods, and the healthier side of a vegan diet. But in the vegan movement, sometimes it seems like the feeling is, well, it's all about animal liberation and that side of things, and a lot of vegans almost don't care about the health aspect of it, or even mock it, or ignore it completely, or look down on it. And what's your perspective on the idea of veganism as a healthy lifestyle, or to be practiced in a healthy way?
Yeah, thanks. I think that's very important. I used to be a little different. I used to be more like, oh, just be vegan, and but I realize no. We really need to be consequent vegan eating. Yeah, actually, mostly raw is a good idea. I think some we eat some cooked foods, some starches and things. But the problem I see so much is that veganism is being, in some ways, infiltrated, and in some ways being hijacked by corporate forces that want people to look at veganism as vegan junk food. Just this sort of plant-based stuff that's genetically engineered and non-organic, very toxic stuff. And I'm telling you, if people go vegan and eat that stuff, they're not going to be healthy. It's full of saturated fat, cholesterol. I mean, not cholesterol, but a lot of fat and a lot of salt, sugar, a lot of preservatives, chemicals. And when people go vegan and are not healthy, that's bad for the animals because then they can't maintain it. And there's a lot of vegans who are no longer vegan. And a lot of them went originally vegan for ethical reasons. They did. They said, oh, I did it for ethical reasons. And they're not vegans anymore. Yeah. It's because they did not really make an effort to understand the importance of being healthy. And being healthy is a tremendously compassionate thing. You know, there's nothing in many ways more compassionate than really proactively taking responsibility for the quality of my health, physically and spiritually and psychologically and morally and emotionally. Because when we're healthy in that way, we're radiating life and joy and enthusiasm and vibrance into the world. And that's beautiful. That brings everybody up. If I'm not doing that, and I've got this sickness, and then I'm bring everybody else has to take care of me, and I'm bringing their energy down. And now I need drugs, right? And these drugs, they're tested on animals, and then they go through me, and they end up in the water, and they make fish and other insects, they kill them or harm them. I mean, it's a big problem. So, that's one of the reasons that we have really taken responsibility for our health. And I still say, the last time I went to a doctor was 1972. Mm-hmm. And so, I just stayed out of the medical establishment, and Madeleine's been the same way. It's been like 40 or 50 years. We haven't used doctors at all. We just say, all right, we're taking responsibility for our health, and we'll do it through, not just through nutrition, but through connecting with nature and spirituality. There's a tremendous truth that spiritual healing is possible. We can heal through understanding our true nature, that our true nature is not this body. As long as we think we're just this body, then something that happens to this body is happening to me, and fear destroys our health. But when we understand that what we are is infinite and eternal consciousness that was never born and will never die, and we're just using this physical vehicle for a few short decades while we're here for a purpose to help raise awareness and help bring love and compassion in our own unique way while we're here, then our physical body becomes so much more open to being healthy all the time because we understand our true nature. So this is something I think that people have understood. I think Jesus understood this. And like when he saw people that they thought they were sick, he saw, no, you're not sick. You're a perfect idea of divine love. You're God. You're a manifestation of divine love. He would help people to see that way. And I think we can all do that. That's why I think the vegan movement, it shouldn't be about judging and blaming and shaming and criticizing each other or people who are eating meat. It should be about seeing the best in others, seeing the beauty, seeing the health, and we can only do that when we see it in ourselves. So that's why the inner work is so important. Most people still have a lot of shame. They don't have self-confidence or self-respect many, many times. And I think inner silence really helps when we just let go of all these concepts of ourself and realize that there's this being that is of the nature of joy and love that's actually deep inside us, always present. And we can just let that out, let that out every day as best we can. And we don't know when it's going to end. It could end tomorrow, right? So every day is precious. So not to take it for granted, to realize that, while we're here, we should do the best we can to be part of the solution. And that means taking responsibility for our health is number one most important thing. It's very important. And not just the quality of our food, but the quality of our relationships. A lot of people are sick because they eat great food and everything else, but they have resentment toward their parents or toward their former spouse or whatever. And that eats away at our health. And being creative is really important. When we're actually creating, we're in a flow that all of our cells are fed with nutrition that's far beyond anything that you can get from food. We're getting nutrition of light because we're bringing light into the world. And so I think, these are the kinds of things that we haven't been taught as children at all. We're taught the opposite of that. We're taught we have to go to a doctor and get a chemical that's toxic if we have a symptom. And we should also realize that symptoms, for the most part, are not bad. That's the other thing. Like if every once in a while I get a runny nose or sore throat, whatever, good. I'm just cleansing. It's a cleansing. It's all cleansing. We don't have to like, oh, terrible thing. It's nothing bad to clean the house. We clean the house now and then. We have a total wrong view of sickness too. We think we should avoid it. It comes up now and then. It's just a cleanse. Go through it and go on. I think we've been so brainwashed by the medical germ theory, and to be afraid of, afraid of everything, afraid of animals, afraid of nature, afraid of microbes, fear. And all that fear does is reduce our health and our understanding of the beautiful synergistic interconnectedness of all these microbes in us. Right? If they died, we would die. I'm not afraid of germs at all. I love germs. They're great. They're the source of life. So I think our mind is really the thing. Most of the contagion is mental. It's like fear thoughts going out and just lodging in people. We should be spreading health with our thoughts, right? Seeing the best in others. I say if people get too close to me, they'll probably get very healthy. So I think that's what we need to kind of focus on, those kind of ideas.
Thank you very much, Will. And could you maybe touch upon the World Peace Diet, the book? How did that come about? Why did you start writing it? And the success, what led, do you think, to the success of it?
Well, that was interesting because when we were living in the RV and we were just traveling and giving these lectures, mostly on intuition development and concerts. And then I started speaking more about compassion for animals and not harming them. And I remember talking to Madeleine about it and just saying to her, through all the research I've been doing over the last 30 years and all the meditation and everything, I can see that there's much more to this whole thing, this whole vegan thing, than just the three things people talk about. Like, it's bad for the environment, it's bad for your health, it's bad for the animals. And I was saying to her, it's much bigger than that. It's our whole society, the history of this, the anthropology, the sociology, the whole economic, political dimension, the environmental. It's really, it touches everything. It's going to be so great. I can't wait to read. Someone's going to write a book that'll give that big picture, and it'll be so empowering to see how everything's interconnected. I can't wait to read it. And then she said, yeah, that'll be neat to read that book, And then about a year later, I said it to her again, and she said, maybe if you're going to want to read that book, you'll have to write it yourself. And I did not want to hear that. And I thought, oh no, that's going to be a big job. And then she said, well, just do some writing every day. Just write something, And so I did. I just started writing. I just wrote things, and I gradually discovered that as I did this for about a year, things emerged. And then eventually I created a book proposal and sent it to Lantern Books in New York City. And they wrote back and they said, if you write that book, we will publish it. So that was it. That kind of gave me the green light. But it was actually 5 years between the time I actually first started writing the World Peace Diet and it was actually published. It was really a labor of a lot of love and a lot of, I wanted to make it the perfect thing. And but it, like I say, it became kind of a movement because it really does give this bigger picture, includes the spiritual dimension, the metaphysical dimension, as well as all the suffering the animals go through. But I tried to keep it really positive without blaming anyone and really focus it not only on pre-vegans, people who are just not vegan and just want to learn about it, but also to people who are already vegans, but really don't understand what it's all about. They just think it's some kind of a thing. I want to be healthy, or I care about animals, or I'm against global warming or whatever. And to take it to a much deeper level, because I realized if people don't go to a deep level with this, they very often they go back. The pressures are on them, and they go back to eating a little meat, a little dairy, a little egg, and more and more. And so it's really important, I think, to understand the big picture. Then we won't go back. We understand, what it's all about.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Dr. Tuttle, for your time today. And
Thank you.
where should people stay in touch with you? And have you got anything coming up that you would like to share?
Well, actually, yeah, we have a website, either my name, willtuttle.com or worldpeacediet.com. You can see Madeleine's art there, my music. Madeleine has a lot of videos of food preparation called Madeleine's Intuitive Kitchen. And then I have quite a few videos of lectures and things. And we have our tour schedule. We have lectures coming up, and we're leaving in 2 days for a lecture tour down through Southern California and Arizona, and then we'll be back. We may be getting over again to England, I don't know, but we have online events also that we do from time to time. So we have our schedule there and articles that I'm writing. We have a new book, actually. I have another book coming out. I'm just finishing it up right now, actually. It's like the first major book since the World Peace Diet. I've written some other books, Buddhism and Veganism, and a book on developing intuition, and a book on veganism and social justice issues called Circles of Compassion. But this new book is called Food for Freedom. And it's really kind of linking together all the things we've been going through the last few years in veganism, health freedom and veganism. So that'll be coming out hopefully this summer. It'll be coming out this summer. So yeah, that's it.
Well, thank you very much. And for all of our listeners, obviously we encourage you to check out the World Peace Diet and Dr. Will Tuttle. And if he's if he's going to be near you, why not go and watch him speak and learn more from him? And that's, as he said, the information of his tour schedules up on his website. And for all our listeners, thank you for supporting us.
Oh, and Madeleine is right here. Do you want to say hi, Madeleine? I'm suddenly throwing a curveball here, but maybe she doesn't mind. She's right here. Here's Madeleine.
Hello. Hi.
So she's just going to say hi. We're finishing up.
Hi, Madeleine. How are you?
Hi. Good. Very good. Yeah.
All right. So
thank you so much. And yeah, we'll see everyone in the next episode of the Love Fruit podcast. Thank you, everyone.
Great. Take care. Thank you.